Welcome, listeners, to Saddle Up Live. I'm really excited to have Rachel King, an attorney I got to know on Doing Divorce Different. And I was really inspired to share her with my Saddle Up Live audience because I was so drawn to Rachel's when she gave her authentic story, and she's going to introduce herself and go into that. But she was so strong and independent, and she seemed to feel so comfortable with power and finances. And quite frankly, I'm not. And I want a little bit more of that. And so I thought, well, I'm going to learn about it with all my listeners here on Saddle Up Live. So I'm really excited. She's going to talk about that a little bit, her authentic story, and about being financially independent. So, listeners, welcome Rachel King. So excited to have her. She's a big deal. She's got her own podcast. She's a high powered attorney in California and other states. She's a CBS legal correspondent. And I'm just so grateful to have you here. Thank you for being here, Rachel.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to talk about this.
I know it's going to be so fun. Well, why don't you start by sharing your story with how you got started?
So I grew up in a middle class family, and though all my parents were employed, and I say all because I came from a divorced family, so I had four parents. Both of my parents got remarried when I was very young and are still with my step parents. So I was really raised in two families, middle class, but we still had the electricity turned off because my dad could not manage money at all. We had some pretty, I don't even know if they were significant, but they really resonated with me as a child. And growing up, all I wanted was like to never have that happen. I'm never going to not have my electricity on. I'm never going to be worried about how I'm going to just survive. So I was drawn from a young age to these careers of power and financial security. And, when I was growing up, maybe it's still a thing, but doctors and lawyers, that was where it was all at. And then we had the big legal shows. The lawyers always seemed so happy. They demanded so much control, and they were making buckets of money. Now, this was all on TV, so I'm not sure how real it is even today. However, that was how I ended up becoming an attorney and kind of why I wanted to go there. I'm also a natural problem solver. So, this idea that people come to you in one of the most difficult times in their life, and I get to solve their problem. They're looking to me. I love giving advice, and now I'm getting paid to give advice. All of it, everything about being an attorney was like right up my alley. So I did that, but I didn't go the normal course. I didn't go to college right away. I tried it and it wasn't for me, so I joined the Army. I had a baby very young, and I did not come from a family where, children out of wedlock were like an appropriate course of action, but I, like everything else in my life, did it my way. And so I had a baby at 21. And I remember thinking I was sort of going, still not totally on the right track, but getting there. She was in daycare, and the daycare lady said, "You're out of diapers. You need to bring in more diapers." And I couldn't afford diapers. I just had no money. And I had, for like 3 days, I had to say, "Oh my gosh, I forgot. Oh my gosh, I forgot." But I didn't forget. I just had no money to go in and buy more diapers until I got paid. And it was truly at that moment that I was like, I am not going to live this life. I am not going to not be able to afford diapers for my child and make all of these excuses. And so that's when I really got my life together and got on the track of this fantasy life dream that I'd created in my head. I need to get on that road because time's just ticking. And so I did. I finished my time in the Army, finished my bachelor's degree, got my law degree, and I hustled and I opened my firm, and I continue to learn how to be better, make more money, and diversify. And all of those things I actually really enjoy. And I'm a millennial, so I have side hustles, the whole nine.
Yeah. I'm not. I'm a grandma, and I still love that whole side hustle thing. So you're a girl after my heart. And I think what I really love about you too, Rachel, is I love that you had the confidence to go against the norm, because I didn't for a long time. And I think that's why I didn't start this podcast, didn't really delve into what I wanted to do until I was in my 50s. I was always trying to fit that mold. So I love that you did. I love that you did. And it's never too late. Obviously, it's never too late. Look at, I get to do this. Never too late. But another thing that I find interesting, I don't know why Tony Robbins is popping in my head as you're telling your story. I don't know if you know him,
I
but
do know him, but I've not done any of his work.
no, and I've just listened to some podcasts, read some books of his, but he also talks about his childhood. And I think sometimes, and you said you're a middle class family, but you had some hard times. I almost think sometimes I wasn't raised in a rich family, but we had never were, I had everything I needed all the time. I almost think a lot of people who are super successful have to fight against something like fight against what you fought against and have that drive in them. Otherwise, it's a little harder to get that drive because you've been so comfortable. I don't know. That just popped into my head.
I've heard that before.
Have you?
That hard times make strong men,
Yes.
right? That's the saying. I think, I will credit my parents. They did a good job. I think a lot of it was me. I, even from a young age, wasn't totally rebellious, but I never really fit in. I always kind of wanted to do my own thing. And then as a teenager, my mom, of all of her kids, I guess I was the most rebellious. And I look at her now and I'm like, are you kidding? I stayed out of drugs. I never got arrested.
Yeah.
I don't know if you could, that's like ideal as a teenager, right? I'm raising teenagers. But even though now looking back, I think I was a reasonable teenager. I still was rebellious, right? I did what I wanted. I didn't like following the rules, and I never really have. That's why I didn't work very well in the army. I want to do things my way. And I really, and society doesn't really like that, right? But I really leaned into it when I realized that that was an uncomfortable place to be in society where you don't really fit in and you're going to do it your way. You either need to embrace it and really, really lean into it, or you need to back off and, maybe conform a little bit more. And I leaned into it, and I still
Yeah.
do. When I opened my law firm, I remember I went to this networking event where there was a whole bunch of lawyers, and I wore a really cute outfit, but I think it was legging. Well, I don't think I know. It was black leggings with knee-high boots and a really pretty sweater. And I was totally put together. I looked very coordinated. And it was an evening event, but it was not formal. And I had an attorney come up to me and I introduced myself, and he said, well, you're not really an attorney. And I said, no, I really am an attorney. And I gave him my card and I said, I'm just starting my own firm. And he looked me up and down. He said, well, you're never going to make it if you dress like that. And I had many attorneys, male and female, make those kind of comments to me. And I remember looking at him and kind of in my head being like, oh yeah, watch me in this neighborhood, this town that I live in, run my law firm and practice how I want to and rock it. And I do. And I
Yeah.
really continue to do it. And I don't know where that personality trait came from. I tell people it just brings out my rebellious side, and then look out.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I want to grab onto that. I really, really do. And like I said, later in life, I've started doing that more. I mean, I wear flannel shirts and baseball caps on some of my calls.
It's fantastic.
I mean, I'm doing this out of my barn. I might be out with the horse. I was out gardening today. I told you that.
That's
So
fantastic.
it is fantastic. And I love that. But, and I told you that I loved that you were so comfortable saying, I want to make a lot of money. Well, so do I, but I feel like a turd if I say that out loud. And it's because I'm a people pleaser. Like, I just want everyone to love me and I want to pretend I'm really perfect and good, which of course we all know how stupid that is and not real and authentic. But so how do you, and you just say you don't know really where that comes from? Because with ladies, it's okay. It's okay to want more. It's okay to be 50 and be like, oh, I want to have a career. I want to do something that I love. It's okay.
It's okay to say, this is what I do. It's okay to say, I don't want to do domestic chores ever. So
I
I'm
kind of
not
like some
going
domestic.
to, I'm going to pay somebody to do
Yeah.
them, and I'm going to figure out how to pay it. And that is truly what I tell myself. I mean, I have these pep talks. I still have times I'm I think I told you I'm controlling, I'm a type A personality, I'm an attorney, I'm all of those things. I like to do things my way. So owning a company was kind of my ticket there. When I was 12, I wanted things and I couldn't get them. My parents wouldn't pay for the clothes that I wanted. And when I went to the mall, I didn't get to ask my parents for $20 to go to the mall. I had to have my own money. So at 12 years old, I thought I'm going to start babysitting so that I can be in control of my money and do what I want. And then I got too many babysitting clients, so I kind of did the at-home version of the Babysitters Club. When I was 16, I started teaching swimming lessons, and the same kind of thing happened. I got too many swimming lessons, so I started recruiting my friends and made money off of them. And I learned early, I call it the Tom Sawyer effect, right? I learned really early that I could make a lot more money if I have other people doing the work for me and I'm just back here controlling it, right? He whitewashed that whole fence by telling other people that it was the fun thing to do. And that's how I live. Now, I still have imposter syndrome and I still sometimes think, oh my gosh, like I'll walk into my office and say, how do I mail this thing? And I always feel bad being like, I don't know how to use the postage machine. I'm sure I could figure it out. I'm a pretty smart person, but I don't know how to do that. And sometimes I feel really guilty, like I've disconnected. But I created a dream in my head that I really wanted, and I have worked tirelessly to get there. And I think it's absolutely possible to create the dream in your head, but you're not going to get there if you're not willing to do the hard work and take a little bit of risk and really put yourself out there. Like you were saying, like be vulnerable, because the dreams are kind of fantasy, and it doesn't just happen by doing the status quo. If you follow what everybody else is doing, you're never going to reach your dream. You're just going to be following the pack. Um, so I do that, but it's still hard. And I look around sometimes. I was talking, my kids, go to school and they talk about where we live. And my daughter, I think just yesterday, she came home and she said, I told somebody that I was rich. And she's 11. And I said, well, you're not rich. And she was like, well, yeah, I mean, look at where we live. And I said, okay, so maybe I'm rich, but like you're nothing. You can't afford to even put food in your mouth or buy yourself a drink. You can't afford the tap water that comes out of the faucet. I can. And she was like, oh, yeah. And I think about that sometimes and it makes me laugh, but it also makes me so proud because everything that I have, I've done on my own. And again, I own a law firm. I own a real estate investment company. I wanted to invest in real estate because I thought that's what all the famous people and the big rich people are
Right.
doing, right? So on a trip to the Bahamas one time, my husband got a trip that was paid for from he like won the trip on for sales. And so we were going and I thought, I think I was late 20s. And I thought, I am going to invest in real estate. I'm going to do this. And so I bought Investing for Real Estate for Dummies on the airplane and I read it the entire trip. That was my reading material. And I got back and I said, so I'm going to do it this year. I'm going to buy an extra house. Like we owned a house. I said, I'm going to buy a house. And he said, really? And I said, yeah, just watch, just watch. And so I did. So I bought one house and now I own 13. They're all residential. I have residential and commercial pieces of real estate. And I still get giddy and excited when I go to my accountant and I, do my net worth sheets. I'm like, how did this happen? Like this girl that had a baby in 21 when nobody thought she should, single, couldn't afford diapers for her child. And now I'm just like, anything, here it is. But you know what? I'm still afraid I'm going to lose it all. So I still work so hard to
Right.
make sure that it continues to generate. It's one of those funny things.
Right. And it's funny because I'm kind of at a stage where here's my tagline: work less, grandma more.
I love
But
that.
I'm following what you're saying with my divorce business, where I've trained people And now I'm just kind of running that business. I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts. I'm going to be there to support. And I'm doing this podcast that I love because it's fun and it's things that I'm interested in. Um, but I still want to add income to my home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think, Rachel, what I've learned, like it's uncomfortable, but it doesn't have to be that hard. Because if it's what you love, yes, I put time in, but I put time into, listening to your podcast because you're going to be a guest on, reading books about health and getting those authors on the podcast. Getting out of my uncomfortable zone by doing things I wouldn't do normally, which is getting on a podcast or speaking to a group or sharing real authentic stories that you kind of don't want to always tell. That's another thing that I'm just learning how to do. So I'm on the same wavelength as you, but I'm at a stage where I want to have more. I don't think it has to be so hard. And I feel like you're
More
kind
for
of,
less, right?
yes. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
been my trajectory for my whole life is how can I make more money and do less? I think I tell people I'm like the laziest person that I know. And they look at me and they're like, oh my God, no, you're not. You're always out doing things. You own multiple companies. You're doing this and this and this. I'm like, right, because it's always because I just don't want to do anything. And so I'm always trying to learn how I can make more money and satisfy my income needs by doing less. Because that's beautiful. Isn't that what we
Mhm,
all want? We all want to make more money and be in and have the maximum amount of freedom. And
mhm.
I think it's possible, but I think it's hard. I had somebody once tell me, if you kind of what you said, if you do what you love, it's not work. And I definitely disagree with that. I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. It's a lot of work no matter what,
Yep,
because you don't get to just do the fun part. You have to do all of the
like
background.
the editing and
Yeah,
yeah.
so you have to put in the time to
Mhm,
get to a point. My firm is a very well-oiled machine, much like your divorce business, I'm sure. And I get to you know run it, and it sort of self-generates the income, and I have to work, of course. I don't stop working it, but I have the freedom and the time to go do other things.
mhm,
But it wasn't like that for the first like 6 years, right? It
mhm.
took so much of I had to do everything.
Yes.
And so I think people need to acknowledge that if you want it, you've got to really keep your eye on the prize and put in the time and do the hard work. And if you have a hard time with deadlines, I live and die by my calendar because, again, I think I'm a pretty lazy person. And if it's not written down, I'm probably not going to do it. So I calendar minutes, even down, to I'm going to go do everything I want, but it's going to fit in my schedule. And I think it's possible. But I'm a big believer in financial independence. I think if every person on earth strives to become financially independent, they will have more freedom and they will enjoy their life more. So that's kind of my life mission for myself. And then also for other people that I interact with is how can I help them get to a place in their life where they can pretty much buy their freedom.
Okay, so I love that, and I think that's gotta be your next book.
All
And
right.
okay, so you tell me, in my situation, what advice, and I'm putting you on the spot, and I don't mean to.
Yeah.
This is just a fun. You're my friend sitting here talking to me. But how could I be financially independent? I mean,
Well, I think,
more so.
right. I think it comes down to what do you love? I think you have to love whatever it is you're going to turn into financial independence. And the biggest, actually, because I've had this conversation, the biggest response I get from people is, well, I don't want to do, I love making costumes, but I don't want to do it because I don't want to turn my hobby into a job. And then it takes the fun out of it. Well, if you're good at it and you love it, it's okay to turn it into a job and do the other parts. But for financial independence, first, I think you need to figure out what it is that you want to be involved in. I don't want to be in finance. Nothing about that sounds fun. I don't like numbers. So I'm not going to look into anything where I have to have that be my reliance. But what I am going to do is say, "Oh, I love real estate. I really love real estate. So how can I turn my what I really love and that I think is fun and enjoyable and I can talk about for hours into a stream of income?" And then researching it, just like you were saying, go out and read the books, listen to the
Mhm.
podcasts, figure out how the different ways that people have made money on this, which one kind of lights a fire under you, and then put together a plan, but a baby step plan. And I mean, I think the dummies books are great. I just really think they have them on everything and they really keep it very, very small so that just about anybody can do it. And I know that doesn't really answer your question because I've kept it very broad, but if you can leverage what you love so that other people are paying you for it, and then once you've started getting paid for it, you can teach other people how to do it, or you can start making money on other people. Then you have just created not just income, but sustainable long term income. I bought my first house and I put a tenant in it and I got a mortgage on it. I think almost every single one of my, no, three of my properties are paid off. All of the rest of them I have mortgages on, and my tenants pay my mortgage down so that
Right.
I get to realize my long-term equity builds and they pay it down. But it doesn't have to be like that. If real estate's not your thing, ultimately what you want to do is make money on other people. And you don't start there. You start there by making money for what you are doing that other people are paying for. And then you can leverage it and slowly grow. And I rely incredibly heavily on other people's expertise.
Mhm.
I'm one person, I can't know everything. I can know a little bit about a lot, and I can read some books. But if I want to publish a book, I'm not going to learn how to publish a book myself. I'm going to go and meet the people that can tell me how I'm going to publish a book. I have one coming up, right? If I
Mhm.
want to invest in real estate, I'm going to go hang out with all the people that have already done that. If I want to have a YouTube channel that supports all of my income and I only get to be a content creator, I'm going to go find those people and pick
Right.
their brain and socialize with them and do the things that I can until I get there. And I think that's the best way, cheap, on the cheap, to get yourself to a certain point is to go hang out with the people that you
Mhm.
want to be like.
Amen. Amen. Okay, so two things I want to kind of follow up on.
Yeah.
I love that you said baby steps, and I so highly recommend. I think my whole life I was in such a rush, and that's how it can be more enjoyable. I don't get freaked out anymore. Like you said, I go meet with someone to talk about what I want to do. And then there's one other thing I was thinking of that has added to me, I think, making something more successful. And I think when I add a piece in about helping others, and I'm going to explain that because my oldest daughter is in her residency in pediatrics. She
Wow.
works in,
Congratulations.
yeah, oh, thanks. So she's in, I'm most proud of the grandson she created. No, I'm so proud, but and it's like a war zone. I mean, this girl, she's in her last year of her residency. She calls me in the morning. She's working nights in the PICU and she's seeing horrible things, a 14-year-old brain dead that she had to do the tests on who's donating the organs. The mom is a doctor where she worked, it's just like there's
Horrible.
so many traumatic things. And she works in oncology, which she tends to think is a little bit more optimistic because so many children do well through cancers. But
That's great.
I was thinking, I've had this, so we had a cabin and we sold it because we bought this farm. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of want that cabin back or something like it because I love the lake life. And I think about my life as a child with my grandparents. Being a grandparent is really important to me and a wife to my husband. I feel like I kind of let him go a little bit with raising the kids. Sorry, Johnny. But So when I think about getting a cabin, I kind of globbed it together with this dream of, well, I kind of, the 4th of July, I usually stay home and try to keep my horses calm from the fireworks. What if I could have this beautiful home on a lake and donate it to a family going through childhood cancer for the week of the 4th of July? So when I add that to my dream, ooh, it kind of makes my heart feel good. Maybe gives me a little bit more purpose to get there. And then I start thinking about, well, I could rent out that cabin, right?
Mhm.
And so then I start thinking about, well, it might not be on the lake that I want to end up on, but maybe on a real popular lake, that's more of a draw to people from Chicago or, whatever, and starting out there and then moving. And so that's what entered my mind when you were talking. So you did help me, even though you said you were being
Yeah.
really general. I just want to show you that when you said that, all this came to my mind.
And all of it is possible. And I think we need to, especially as women, we need to be okay with making money. I mean, it doesn't have to, it's okay to say, I'm going to do this because it's going to earn me an income. Don't feel bad. I mean,
Hmm.
everything that I do, I look at and see if it's going to be a financial benefit or if it's not. And if it's not going to be a financial benefit, then I look at it and I really weigh, is this something that I want to contribute my time to? Do I care about this? Is it going to be benefiting me in some way? And maybe people would say, well, that's really selfish. But even if I give it and it gives me that warm fuzzy, like, what am I getting back from this? And if I can't answer those questions, then I've given myself permission to say, so I'm not going to do that. I'm not going
Hmm.
to go out on a limb for something that isn't going to get me ultimately to where I want to be. And I'm not going to feel guilty about doing it that way either, because I feel like sometimes, especially as women, we have mom guilt, we have wife
Yep.
guilt, we have societal pressures that we're feeling. And sometimes I can be like, I'm just not going to do that. One thing I wanted to add in, just because I think it was important and I missed it, is while I think baby steps are really important, and I only take baby steps if I get really overwhelmed, because I do, I will sit back and I'll just say, okay, just come up with the next thing that you're going to do, just one thing.
Hmm.
But you can't not have an end game either, because otherwise
Right.
your baby steps never come to be. So, for example, I am writing this book. This is a big thing. And I knew it was an easy thing to put off at the end of the day is writing. And I said, I'm just going to publish it in October of 2024. And I picked that day before I'd even started writing. And then I just kind of backwards planned it and thought, okay, I need to hire an editor by this time. I need to get through it. And I can do 20 minutes, twice a week is kind of what I can dedicate
Hmm.
to this. And it works, but you have to have some way that the baby steps to make sure that you complete the baby steps and that you're always moving forward toward it. Otherwise, 10 years will pass and you'll still be sitting in the same place you were before.
Rachel, I call that my future self work. And it's a big deal. Like I sit and dream about my future self in 10 years. And then I do the roadmap about how I'm going to I have podcasts on that. I mean,
Yes.
I totally agree with that. And I want to say too, um when you were talking about, go with your passion, you don't need to feel guilty about it. I don't know if this is going to help anyone, but I'm a super strong Christian. And I did deal with a lot of guilt, right? With that, I like, oh, and then I finally just went, you know what? I just go, God, please let my passions match yours. And then give it to him. And he created you. He created you to do these most amazing things. And so do it. And you don't, that's what you're here for. So I've kind of let that go just recently,
Good for you.
a
It's
little
hard
bit.
though, isn't it?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
so hard. I'm not kidding. My mom took care of the house. My stepmom took care of the house. My siblings, almost all of them, like naturally inside of them, find some kind of peace and joy by cleaning and doing laundry. And I'm not that person. Like, I can't stand doing laundry. I will take off my clothes and leave them on a pile and then step over the pile. I mean, if there is ever an excuse to not clean, I will. I cook just so that I have an excuse. I mean, I like to cook, but just so I have an excuse to be like, I cooked. I don't have to do the dishes. Right?
Ah,
That is 100% me. And I still feel guilty about it. Like, oh, but I'm supposed to do this. I'm the mom. I'm supposed to. And so I still to this day battle with the fact that no, I'm going to pay a house cleaner. And that's going to be the last thing that goes if I have to cut back is this because I hate
yeah.
it. But I think one of the things we all need to do is be really patient and give ourselves grace. And it's okay if we
Mhm.
don't act or want to do the things that we previously were expected to do, or these false expectations we have of ourselves. Figure out what you're good at, lean into that, dream. Don't be afraid to dream, but don't think that your dreams are going to happen automatically. Put your steps in, and whatever you can do, if it's annually, weekly, whatever, you just do one thing to get to the next step. And you always have that next step planned and knowing when you're going to do it. I think we're all bound to be the best versions of ourselves that we can be. And I think financial independence will be inevitable if you do it that
Yeah.
way.
Amen. And what a that's a great soundbite to end on. We went way over time. So, Rachel, it has been so awesome to get to know you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a joy.
All right. Take good care.
Thank you, you too.